Methods of data collection. Schedule. Statistical data, as we have seen, can be either primary or secondary. Primary data are those which are collected for the first time and so are in the crude form. But secondary data are those which have already been collected. Primary data are always collected from the source. It is collected either by the investigator himself or through his agents. There are different methods of collecting primary data. Each method has its relative merits and demerits. The investigator has to choose a particular method to collect the information. The choice to a large extent depends on the preliminaries to data collection. Schedule method of data collection will be discussed now. What is schedule in research methodology? A schedule is a structure of set of questions on a given topic which are asked by the interviewer or investigator personally. The order of questions, the language of the questions, and the arrangement of parts of the schedule are not changed. However, the investigator can explain the questions if the respondent faces any difficulty. It contains direct questions as well as questions in tabular form. Schedule includes open-ended questions and close-ended questions. Open-ended questions allow the respondent considerable freedom in answering. Close-ended questions have to be answered by the respondent by choosing an answer from the set of answers given under a question just by ticking. Following are the different types of schedules used by social scientists and anthropologists. Village or community schedule. It is used by census researchers who collect general information on populations, occupations, etc. Family or household schedule. It gives full demographic details of households, the status of individuals, data on education, age, family relations, etc. Opinion or attitude schedule. To schedule the views of population regarding an issue. What is schedule method of data collection? Schedule is the tool or instrument used to collect data from the respondents while interview is conducted. Schedule contains questions, statements on which opinions are elicited, and blank spaces or tables for filling up the respondents. The features of schedules are: the schedule is presented by the interviewer. The questions are asked and the answers are noted down by him. The list of questions is a more formal document. It need not be attractive. The schedule can be used in a very narrow sphere of social research. The main purposes of schedule are threefold: to provide a standardized tool for observation or interview in order to attain objectivity, to act as memory tickler, that is, the schedule keeps the memory of the interviewer or observer refreshed and keeps him reminded of the different aspects that are to be particularly observed, to facilitate the work of tabulation and analysis. In case the informants are largely uneducated and non-responsive data cannot be collected by the mailed questionnaire method. In such cases, schedule method is used to collect data. Here, the questionnaires are sent through the enumerators to collect information. Enumerators are persons appointed by the investigator for the purpose. They directly meet the informants with the questionnaire. They explain the scope and objective of the inquiry to the informants and solicit their cooperation. The enumerators ask the questions to the informants and record their answers in the questionnaire and compile them. The success of this method depends on the sincerity and efficiency of the enumerators. So, the enumerator should be sweet-tempered, good-natured, trained and well-behaved. Schedule method is widely used in extensive studies. It gives fairly correct result as the enumerators directly collect the information. The accuracy of the information depends upon the honesty of the enumerators. They should be unbiased. This method is relatively more costly and time consuming than the mailed questionnaire method. Purposes or objectives of the schedule. Let us now look at the objectives of the schedule method of data collection. Delimitation of the topic. A schedule is always about a definite item of research study. Its object is a single subject item rather than the research subject in general. The schedule delimits and specifies the subject of inquiry. Aids memory. It is not possible for the interviewer to keep in mind or memorize all the information that has to be collected from different respondents. If no standardized tool is available, he might put different questions to different persons and thereby get confused when he has to analyze and tabulate the data. Schedule acts as an aid memory. Aid to classification and analysis. Another objective of schedule is to tabulate and analyze the data collected in a scientific manner. Through schedules, he can collect the matter in a homogeneous manner. Characteristics of a good schedule. The following are the essentials or characteristics of a good schedule. Accurate communication. It means that the questions that are given in schedule should be such that the respondent is able to understand them in the light in which they are asked. For accurate communication, the questions should be of the types we will discuss now. Questions should be interlinked. It means that if information about the different aspects is required, the questions asked should be such that their answers may present compact picture on the information. Subjective questions. The questions should be suggestive. There should be questions on each topic, but the questions should be so designed that the respondent may be stimulated to give the correct answers. Accurate response. Accurate response means that the schedule should be such that the required information may be easily secured. For this, the interviewer has to prepare the schedule in a scientific manner and also make efforts to inspire the respondent to give answers. Let us discuss about the steps which are to be taken. The size of the schedule should be attractive. It should not be too lengthy to make the respondent bored. The questions of the schedule should be clearly worded and be unambiguous. Even if some unpalatable information is to be collected, the framer of the schedule should couch his questions in such a language that the information is secured without injuring the feelings of the respondent. The questions free from subjective evaluation. The questions should be relevant and pointed. They should not deal with the subjective evaluation. Information sought should be capable of being tabulated. Questions of the schedule should be so framed that the information collected through them should be capable of being tabulated and, if needed, subject to statistical analysis. Types of schedule. Schedules that are used in business research are classified as under. Observation schedule. The schedules that are used for observation are known as observation schedule. In these schedules, observer records the activities and responses of a worker or a group under specific conditions. The main purpose of the observation schedule is to verify information. Rating schedule. In the fields of business guidance, psychological research and social research, the rating schedules are used to assess the attitude, opinions, attitudes, preferences, inhibitions and other like elements. As is evident from the term rating, in these schedules, the value and the trend of the above mentioned qualities is measured on a rating scale. Document schedule. The schedule of this type are used to obtain data regarding written evidence and case histories from autobiography, diary, case histories, or final records of governments, etc. It is a good method for collecting exploratory data or preparing source list. Interview schedule. In an interview schedule, an interviewer presents the questions of the schedule to interview and records their responses on blank spaces. Procedure for formulating a schedule. Shall we now look at procedure for formulating a schedule? Study the different aspects of the problem. The problem under study should first of all be split up into various aspects. The determination of these aspects will depend upon clear understanding of the problem under study. Subdivide the problem to get necessary information. Each aspect has again to be broken up into a number of subparts. These subparts should be quite exhaustive to give a full and complete picture of the aspect under study. Class questions. Care should be taken to see that the questions convey the exact sense. Respondents will be willing to supply information without any hesitation, bias, or distortion of facts if questions are exact and clear. Serialization of questions. In order to obtain well-organized information, it is necessary that the questions should be presented to the respondents in a well-ordered serial. It has been experienced to various field studies that the change in the order of questions affects the answers adversely. Testing the validity of schedule. Whatever may be the degree of precaution taken, some slips are based to be left out, and these can be located when the schedule is put into a reliability and validity test. Division. The schedule to be divided into adequate number of divisions. Introductory part, instructional part, issues related parts, etc. are certain parts by which the schedule is divided into parts. Appropriate form of questions. Use appropriate forms of questions at appropriate places. Open-ended, close-ended, pictorial, yes or no, multiple choice questions, etc. can be used. Suitability of schedule method. This method is generally employed in following situations. The field of investigation is wide, where the researcher-investigator requires quick results at low cost, where the respondents are educated, where trained and educated investigators are available. Similarities between schedule and questionnaire. Both are set of related items having questions relating to central problems. Both use mainly structured questions, and these questions are so phased and interlocked that they have a built-in mechanism for testing the reliability and validity of the response. In both, the same set of questions is administered to all the respondents and comparable results are obtained. Both these instruments have to be used with the same general principles of designs and have to take into account the same problems and basic difficulties. They have to be limited in length. In both, the central problem has to be concentrated upon the few considerations involved in the problem of evolving the questionnaire and a schedule as a unit. Drawing the responding into a situation through awake and interest. Proceeding from simple to complex questions. No early and sudden request for information of a personal and embracing intimate nature. Not asking embarrassing questions without giving the respondent an opportunity to explain himself. Moving smoothly from one item to another. In both, certain types of questions have to be eliminated, such as vague and ambiguous questions, emotionally changed questions, loaded and leading questions, questions eliciting no response and questions having structured response to the queries, violence to the existing facts. In both, pilot studies and pre-tests are necessary for formulating the instrument and for bringing them to the final form. They have to go through the same stages of development. Distinction between schedule and questionnaire. In schedule, there are a number of questions. In questionnaire also, we collect information through a set of questions. Some people remark that schedule is sort of informal questionnaire. Prima facie, the two are more or less the same, but there is a vital difference between the two. From the point of view of the objective, the schedule and questionnaire are very much similar. But from the point of view of methodology, reliability, tie, etc., the two are different from one another. The difference between two lies in regard to the following points. Methodology. The schedule is based on the direct method. In it, the researcher or investigator themselves collects the information by asking questions, but in questionnaire, the investigators make direct observation in the field. Questionnaire method is an indirect method of collecting the data. Geographical area covered through questionnaire method is generally wide. Since it is not possible for an investigator to reach a very individual who forms a subject of the research area, he resorts to questionnaire method. Reliability of the information collected. It is said that the information that is collected through schedule is more reliable. It is direct method, so reliability is more guaranteed. Even if some wrong information creeps in, the researcher can verify it with the respondent. In questionnaire method, the reliability is not guaranteed. The respondent fills the questionnaire and mails or sends it back. If anything has been left out, the interviewer or researcher has no method to correct the incorrect information. Types of questions. Generally, the questions that are included in the schedule are short and pointed. Their answers are sometimes limited to the use of the method of saying yes or no. There is no possibility of irrelevant and unnecessary questions being given place in the schedule. This is not necessarily the case with the questionnaire. Questions contained in the questionnaire are such that require long. When the research topic is wide and controlled observation is to be made, the questions have to be very wide and detailed. When the respondent gives detailed information only, then it is possible for the investigator or researcher to analyze the information. Factor of time and distance. In this method, observation is not the sole criterion, but as a result of the exchange of thoughts between the interviewer and the interviewed, the background is prepared. This is helpful in removing the distance between investigator and the respondent. Distribution. There is one more difference between the schedule method and questionnaire method from the point of view of distribution. It is up to the respondent to send a complete questionnaire or not. He may not send a complete questionnaire, but this is not the case in schedule method. The interviewer or investigator, if he is tactful, can persuade the respondent to furnish answers to the questions in the schedule. In this method, chances of poor or low response are less as compared to the questionnaire method. Clarification of questions. In schedule method, the researcher can clarify the meaning or underlying idea of the questions of the schedule to the respondents who are not educated or are not intelligent enough as to grasp the underlying idea. That is why schedule method can be used even when the respondents are illiterate or have lower IQ. In questionnaire method, there is no such possibility. Use in sampling method. Schedule method can be easily and safely used in sampling method of research. Every person who is included in the sample because of the personal influence of the interviewer furnishes the information correctly and reliability. Since the services of interviewer are available for clarification and analysis, the respondent or the sample is able to answer correctly and give representative answers. Questionnaire method is not useful for sampling method. Since the investigator is not present, The respondent who has to furnish answers is sometimes not able to answer all the questions correctly and as required. Due to this limitation, the data collected is not representative. Instrument design. The schedule is generally framed keeping in view the difficulties of the tabulators and field workers. The questions in the schedule are so framed that the field workers can have access to the sample. The questions in the questionnaire are framed not on the basis of the educational and economic standards of the respondent. This sometimes creates problems for the investigator or researcher when the stage of the tabulation is reached. Organization of schedule. Once the schedule has been properly and scientifically framed, the process of interview starts. It is through interview that schedule is completed and the data collected. For this purpose, the following steps have to be taken. Selection of respondents. The first thing that has to be done after the framing of the schedule is to select the proper type and number of informants or respondents. Generally, the sampling method is employed in the use of the schedule. The sample selected be perfectly representative. The sample having been selected, their names and addresses should be legibly and correctly noted. This would enable the field workers to approach them. Selection, training and job of the field worker. In schedule method, it is the field workers who carry on the interview and collect data. Since there is a dearth of field workers, they have to be selected according to the requirements and characteristics of the study. They have also to be trained accordingly. Apart from the training, they should possess certain basic characteristics and to conduct the study properly. The field worker has to possess the following characteristics: honesty and integrity, initiative and tactfulness, patience, smartness, unbiased and scientific outlook, interest in research area, vigilant, knowledgeable about the subject of study, trained in technique and methods of study. Interview and correct replies. In schedule method, the success very much depends upon the results of the interview. If the field worker has made a successful interview, there is every likelihood that he has collected the correct information. It requires the following things. Correct approach. It means that the field worker should approach the respondent in such a manner that he may get the right expression from him. Generally, he should be approached when he is not busy or through some such contact that he may not refuse to provide the information. Proper response. Proper response is the result of a proper approach. Apart from it, the proper response depends upon other factors also. For this, field worker should be able to convince the respondent. Correct reply. The field worker collects his data on the basis of the answers given by the respondent. It involves two factors. One is the correctness of the schedule. Second, the proper approach to the respondent. For proper response and correct reply, the respondent use probing questions but without injuring the feelings of the respondents. Testing the validity of the results. When the schedule has been returned by the field worker, it should be subjected to certain tests and checking so that it may be found out that the data collected is correct. It can be done through various ways. The investigator may himself select certain respondents and interviews he gained. In case the reply is different than what has actually been recorded on the schedule, the whole lot should be either rejected or subjected to study again. If there is slight variation, the validity should not be doubted. Limitations of schedule method. Schedule method of data collection, like all other methods, has limitations. Costly and time consuming. As compared with questionnaire, schedule method is generally costlier and more time consuming. But this factor becomes a serious limitation when the correspondents are physically scattered over a wide area. To approach all of them is prohibitively costly, besides involving excessive time. Requirement of a large number of well-trained field workers. The schedule method requires very large number of well-trained and experienced field workers. Therefore, it becomes very difficult, if not impossible, to hire a large number of experienced workers. It involves great cost, and sometimes so many workers are not easily available and one cannot depend upon inexperienced hands. Adverse effect of personal presence. Whereas the personal presence proves himself in assuring the response, removing their doubts, it also becomes an inhibiting factor. Many people can note down certain facts on papers but cannot say them in presence of others. Organizational difficult. If the field of research is geographically wide, it becomes difficult to organize research. To gather workers who are well acquainted with various geographical regions and different types of people is a mammoth task. Though not beyond achievement, it is certainly difficult. From the above discussion, it is clear that the schedule methods can be used successfully in a limited region and on limited number of respondents. To sum up, accurate information and accurate response are the two essential conditions of a good schedule. Accurate communication is effected by proper wording of questions so as to produce desired sense without any ambiguity. Accurate response is said to have been achieved when replies contain the information sought for. The response is achieved by stimulating the respondents to fill the schedule. Besides, the physical structure of the schedule should be attractive. The questions asked or information sought should be adequate and relevant to the inquiry, so that final generalization may be based upon it. The information sought should not only be valid, it should also be capable of being tabulated and, if possible, being subjected to statistical analysis. This method of data collection is very much like the collection of data through questionnaire, with little difference, which lies in the fact that schedules pro forma containing a set of questions are being filled in by the enumerators who are specially appointed for the purpose. These enumerators, along with schedules, go to respondents, put to them the questions from the pro forma in the order the questions are listed, and record the replies in the space meant for the same in the pro forma. In certain situations, schedules may be handed over to respondents and enumerators may help them in recording their answers to various questions in the said schedules. Enumerators explain the aims and objects of the investigation and also remove the difficulties which any respondent may feel in understanding the implications of a particular question or the definition or concept of difficult terms.